Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us at this Thinking Forward session. I'm Becky, I'm the Chief Exec of the English Association, and I'm really pleased to be here with you this afternoon. The EA is a learner society and subject association which was founded in 1906 to promote, support, and celebrate the discipline of English studies. We cover all stages of education, from primary and early years through to secondary and further education, to higher education and beyond, and we cover all parts of the discipline across language, linguistics, literature, and creative writing. Events like this one are made possible by the fantastic contribution of our volunteer speakers, so thank you very much to Linda and Sharon for being here for our session today. Our members also make it possible to keep these events free and open to all by paying their membership fees. So if you would like to contribute to the national conversation about English and help support our discipline, please do consider joining us. Membership starts at just £29 and enables you to support our events and campaigning work for a whole year, and you get access to a range of member benefits, including online access to all our journals. Right, that's enough from me. I'll hand over to you, Linda. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, Becky. That's really good of you. Thanks everyone for coming along today and giving up your lunch hour. I'm delighted to introduce today's speaker, Sharon Ruston. Sharon's a very distinguished romanticist, and her current projects include an edition of the selected poetry of Humphrey Davy for the UCL Press with Greg Tate. She's co-general editor with Daniel Cook of the Oxford Complete Works of Mary Shelley, which will be published in 15 volumes between 2028 and 2036. And for this edition, she's going to solely edit the volume for the 1818 text of Frankenstein. Sharon's also been commissioned by OUP to write the very short introduction to romantic poetry. But her talk today comes out of her work on Humphrey Davy's notebooks. So Sharon, thank you so much for being with us this lunchtime, and over to you.
Thank you, Linda, and thank you for the invitation. It's very nice to be here. So since 2021, myself and 3,500 volunteers from around the world have been trying to decipher what this man, Humphrey Davy, wrote in his notebooks some 200 years ago. The notebooks are mostly held in the archives of the Royal Institution of London. We digitised them and transcribed the often quite difficult handwriting to find out what was written in them. Why would we bother? You might reasonably ask. What did we find in them? And I hope to give you a little bit of some answers to those questions in my talk. And just to say that this is the biggest collaborative project that I've ever been involved in, and I thoroughly enjoyed that aspect of it particularly. So yes, Davy was born in Penzance in Cornwall, 1778. He isolated more chemical elements than anyone else has before or since, but is perhaps best known now for the miner's safety lamp that he developed, a wire mesh lamp, which became known as the Davy lamp. He was also the first person to inhale nitrous oxide, very topical these days, those silver canisters that you find all over the parks. Davy wrote poetry throughout his life and was the friend and acquaintance of many of the Romantic poets. He hardly published any of this poetry during his lifetime. So before this project, we had no idea how much poetry that was written, and there is a good deal, some of it quite interesting. He wrote poetry in his laboratory sometimes. So we have pages of notebooks where he is writing a chemical experiment, and then there's a few lines of poetry, and the pages are burned and torn and stained with the corrosive chemicals that he was using in his experiments. Yes, and so as Linda said, Greg and I now are editing the first edition of Davy's poetry with UCL Press, which will be an online edition, and the manuscript's due this summer. So in total, then 13,221 pages were transcribed by volunteers, and these were accompanied by about 4,000 explicatory notes. And you can see all of this on the Lancaster digital collections, which is fully searchable. So the web address is on the slide, and apparently if you take a picture of that QR code, it will take you to the site as well. Or you can just Google Lancaster digital collections. So it's been a huge project, and I'm grateful to have been a part of it. And I think I should acknowledge from the outset the help of the whole project team. So Eleanor Bird, Sam Blicken, Andy Hartnell, Frank James, Andrew Lacey, and Joe Taylor, not to mention the thousands of volunteers who helped with the transcriptions themselves and much more besides. So to tell you a little bit about the project, we used a platform called Zooniverse. This was a screenshot I took a while back of Zooniverse. They're the world's largest platform for crowdsourced research. Since they were created in 2009, they've launched more than 450 projects so far. And the range of what they do is really impressive. It's not all transcription, there's all sorts of different things. They've got 2.6 million volunteers around the world, registered as users. And when I retire, this is what I'm going to spend my time doing. I'm going to do all of these projects because they all look so utterly fascinating and really important as well. New things are coming up every day that they do. This was the website for our Zooniverse project. So the transcription side of it is closed now, but our talk pages are still going, and we still use them. They're still very active at the moment to talk to volunteers. So this platform then, Zooniverse, relies on volunteers giving up their time and their expertise. Zooniverse calls these volunteers citizen scientists. They are members of the public who provide the people power needed for huge research projects. Another term is crowdsourcing. In short, I could never have achieved alone what we have achieved on this project without the help of the volunteers. Absolutely no way. God knows how long that would have taken to have done that. And it would be not as good at all. So we began then with a pilot project in 2019, and a selection of Davy's notebooks dating from 1795 to 1805 were transcribed in mere days. Over the course of 19 days, 505 transcribers from all over the world transcribed 626 pages of Davy's notebooks. And people particularly enjoyed doing this activity because of the range of things in them, the mix of genre and topic. So this is just a screenshot of 3 of the notebooks. There's 129, I think it is. But there's lots of different things in them. So he doodled a lot. Here we have sketches, even watercolors, geological sketches. This is of High Force in the northeast. It's very interested in geology as well. Loads of this kind of thing, loads of faces in profile. One of my students this week, on Monday was it, said that they thought they'd identified Byron in profile, and I was desperate for that to be true. But when you look at it, I'm like, whoa, I don't know. Very hard to know from a profile picture comparing it to an oil painting of the time. But if anyone can identify any of these people, I would very much like to know. Sums, think money he owed people, travel budgets. This is calculations for a chemical experiment, but also reading lists, shopping lists, gossip about his contemporaries, musical views, philosophical musings. And particularly late in life, when he's traveling around Europe for his health, he uses his notebook as a kind of personal diary, detailing where he goes, who he sees, the inns he stays at, the meals he has, takes the temperature of the room every day for a period, his medical treatments, the amount of leeches that have been applied, where, and that kind of thing, his feelings about the countries that he visits and their inhabitants. So what I hadn't realised before the project was about how important this talk message board would be. This is how we correspond with, we can communicate with the volunteers and how they talk to each other. So one of our project team, Sam Blicken, has written about discussions on the talk board. So there was a volunteer who was trying to work out whether the word she was reading was awe, A-W-E. And in order to do that, she went off and did a load of research to try and find out whether it was. And this is the volunteer's quotation. I was trying to confirm my reading of the river name Orr, and it looks like it is the River Orr in Scotland. I searched online and found multiple references from the 1800s of geologists mentioning the porphyry there, including Davy in a geology lecture. So the posts that she included links to a Wikipedia article for the river, to a Google Books search result of the collected works of Humphrey Davy, and she'd done all this work, and that kind of got us thinking about well, the people were doing a lot of work, a lot of research to kind of just to do their transcription. When we surveyed people at the end of the pilot project, 95% said they enjoyed the work and wanted to do more. We discovered that our transcriber demographic was predominantly over 65 years old, almost half of whom had a postgraduate degree. So our volunteers were teachers, medical professionals, librarians, civil servants, industrial chemists, and others. So everyone who contributed had their own particular skill set or experience set or knowledge set that they could bring to the vast array of topics that Davy was interested in. Like he was such a, he really was interested in so many different things. I feel that well, certainly I don't have, all of the interests that he has or know about all the things that he knew about. Yes. So we were awarded more funding then from the AHRC. And our full project launched in the summer of 2021. Lockdown. Our volunteer demographic was understandably worried about going outside and socializing. And we've been told that our project helped relieve people from feelings of isolation and loneliness. Those who were working said it helped them avoid burnout at work. Yet others told us that they thought transcription was a good activity for mindfulness and relaxation, which I do agree with. I think Linda's nodding there as well. I really think there's a certain thing about if once you get the word as well, you have a joy in it that you don't get necessarily in lots of other parts of our academic life. You can know you're right about something completely. People talked about the sense of community that they felt, quote, when working on the project during my isolated working from home lifestyle. So from the outset then, we tried to create a community and we endeavour to continue to do so. All of our participants have talked about their enjoyment of being part of something bigger than themselves and contributing to, as one volunteer put it, something historic. So I continue to be bowled over by the expertise and willingness of the volunteers. They are still helping us now. They are still helping me. Some of them are much better at Davy's handwriting than I am now and know a lot more about him than I know about. They'll say to me, "Oh no, Sharon, Davy wouldn't have done that. He wouldn't have been there then." And I'll be like, "Oh gosh, that's absolutely right." I mean, people are just incredible. This shows you how the project would have worked. You would underline the transcription was working, you would underline a line of text and a box would appear, and we had every line transcribed 3 times. So if you think 13,500 pages with the amount of lines on each page, and then each line is done 3 times, an enormous project. If you were the first person, you had an empty box and you would just write in what you thought it was. If you were the second or the third, you would be commenting on something. So you'd have a line someone had put in there, and you could either agree and just leave it, or you could change it. So you did have a sense of other people there as well. The volunteers were kind of collaborating with each other. Then we used a tool called Alice, which is a kind of aggregated tool. You can hopefully see down the side there, consensus score. So everything was checked by their project team, the research associates, and myself and other people. And so basically, if there's a consensus score of 4.4, you might think, oh yeah, that everyone's agreed with that. Whereas when it's, not, well, actually, you can see where it's edited, where it says edited, that means that someone went in and changed it. And that might have been because there was quite a lot of disagreement, so they kind of checked it and went in and changed it. This is the talk message board as it looks. So the project then emphasised collaboration from day one, not only in the fact that the university researchers are collaborating with members of the public to produce these transcriptions, but volunteers also talked about how much they enjoyed collaborating with each other. So one told us it always felt like a collaborative shared experience. You could make comments or read those that others had made. You felt the presence of the researchers and the volunteers involved in the project. So this is what it looks like now. There's a lot more notebooks down that side. This is the Lancaster Digital Collections. It's all available to the public. You can search it now. And this is the high quality TIFF image, so you can zoom in and do all sorts of lovely stuff there, and the transcription on the side. And here you can see that we've got some terms that we've annotated. So the new thing that happened during the project, which I hadn't expected or proposed to the HRC, was that basically we used the volunteers' notes and the work that they'd done in the talk pages to form the basis of the annotations, and then everything was checked by the project team. So I'm now calling this a crowdsourced edition, which I think is new. I mean, maybe other people have done this and probably they have, but I just haven't heard a lot about that. So it's not just that they did the transcriptions of volunteers, they helped us with the research that helps to create the explicatory notes, the annotations. Yes. So one of the interesting things that came out of the project as well is that we hadn't quite realised how many other hands are in the notebooks. Loads. And I don't get it. I don't really understand it still. I mean, these notebooks have got different purposes, and I understand that, but some of them are there's different hands in very small, intimate notebooks that he was in personal notebooks as well. We were able to identify one of the hands, but there's loads. So anyway, Sarah Cole and Alexis Wolf have written a blog post about this. The existence of different hands proves, as they put it, that the notebooks were shared and social objects used by multiple authors. So in other words, when originally used, many of these notebooks were themselves collaborative efforts. So they're all up now. This is I'm going to show you one of my favorite examples of collaboration from the project. It's such my favorite one that I know that I think Becky's seen it already. Anyway, so it's so my favorite thing, but I've got lots of others as well. We had this in a sketchbook, and we had no idea what this was, where it was of, but someone noticed that there was this bridge. And then one of the volunteers identified it as the Carrick Bridge in Northern Ireland. And we were able to confirm that because he was in that area and he mentions that place in that notebook. But otherwise, I mean, I can't tell you how many sketches haven't been identified. So that would be a really great thing if anyone could go through and start kind of putting place names to things where we don't have place names. There's an awful lot of work still to do. I've only given a whistle-stop tour of the project itself because we also did loads of other things. We had events, a conference, a travelling exhibition. We had transcribathons where volunteers came in person or online to transcribe in real time. 4 babies were born to members of the project team, none of whom were called Humphrey, despite my best efforts. We've been working with STEM Learning to produce teaching resources for pupils based on Davy's poetry, trying to show that there can be connections rather than divisions between science and literature. I'd like to mention that I currently have a computer studies MSc student, Will Cook. He's not the first of these doing a placement with us. He's working to implement revisions that the volunteers have identified are needed. And I have 2 groups of special project students who are working on the notebooks at the moment. Our last seminar is at 4 today. They're trying to trace ideas that they're interested in across Davy's notebooks and seeing how his kind of thoughts change as during his life. So in all of this is to say that the publication of the notebooks really is a beginning, as much as it was an ending of a certain stage of thing. But now I really hope that people will use them and discover amazing things in them. And if they do, could they please tell me about it? Thank you very much.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Sharon. Fantastic. And it's brilliant to hear about all the wonderful things you and the team, the very large team, have done. It's amazing. If I may, I'll start with a few questions. But please, folks, do post questions in the chat, and we'll pick up on them and ask them to Sharon. So you've told us a bit about how the collaboration came about, and also how it works. Could you tell us about any challenges you met? Were there any particular issues or challenges that arose as the project developed, or at different stages in it, actually?
I mean, there were loads, because So in a weird way, lockdown helped us because, as I said, we were kind of it kind of forced everyone sort of to create this community, and I mean, people helped us, volunteers helped us for part of their day every day for years. Some of them, we had this like, apparently it's the way I talk about the large numbers, but you get this core group of people who are really into it, and I made, met some wonderful people along the way, and that really was my favorite bit, was meeting the volunteers and talking to them about their lives and stuff. So lockdown was good in that way, but it was really bad in other ways because we couldn't get into the Royal Institution to do the scanning. So
Hmm.
that was just absolutely terrifying. And Royal Institution was going through really bad times financially because of the lockdown and the pandemic and things. And there were some really dodgy moments where I thought we weren't going to be working with them anymore. Change of regime at the top, and they're like, "Why are we doing this?" And I still have that a bit with when institutions are pressured financially. I understand that their focus changes, and suddenly you're like, "Well, why?" They're like, "Well, why are we doing this? What are we getting out of this?" And it certainly isn't money. So that caused real problems all the way along. I would say some proper sleepless nights over that stuff. And then the other side of it was when we did the proposal, um, the digital collections platform didn't even exist. There was a Cambridge Digital Collections, and Lancaster knew that they wanted to get a similar thing. It's the same sort of system. Manchester, I think, had one as well, um, but we hadn't done it yet, and we had no idea how it would work. And that was just, I mean, and that really, we didn't finish on time because of that. Um, and now I kind of wonder, Andy Hartland, who has been absolutely unbelievably brilliant, but actually has a job doing lots of other things, but we had no provision in our thing. We didn't, for time for the library to do this or for money. We just hadn't costed it in any way properly. Um,
Hmm.
so we were relying on people's goodwill. And I think even now, Andy would say that he probably didn't set it up in the way he would if he'd do it now,
Yeah.
as well. We did a quite a kind of old-fashioned thing. And I mean, the way that things change, there's so much now you could do, even with the kind of software that's available and stuff, that would have taken a lot of the hard work out of it. But I often get asked, why didn't we use transcribers, which is the
Yeah.
yeah, but that I do have an answer to that because we wanted it to be about the people, and meeting the volunteers, and
Hmm.
and it being, and I'd been told that the gold standard, which may still be true, the gold standard is for human transcribers, that's checked, that is done 3 times and that sort of thing, and then checked. I mean, the check-in, was checked by a
Yeah.
number of times by different people. So that said, there's still loads of mistakes in it as well. But maybe it's just so massive that that's going to be the
Mm.
case, and you have to at some point give up with it. Say, that's it, we've done it. Mm.
That's fantastic. I mean, were there any, yeah, the talk boards were fascinating. So were there any challenges that the volunteers started to identify that they could help each other with, or you could
Oh
all
yeah,
work together to help them? I mean, that,
yeah. No, there was, and that's until really recently. So because we were so late, the entire what was not checked was how it was up on the Lancaster Digital Collections. So by the time that happened, I'd lost all the team of,
mm,
10 of us. There was loads of research associates and everything, and everyone had gone. And it was just me. And I was like, there's 13,500 pages. How am I going to check this against the original? So the volunteers did that. And some of the volunteers trained up to do like quite specialized kind of
mm,
work. So they absolutely, and still, so they're still now. So one person is still now working through. We had two until recently, and then they'd be, and there's lots of, I mean, I've put them now down on our website as our team, among our team, and that you really do. If you're going to use crowdsourcing, it has to be not exploitative. It has to be kind of properly done,
mm,
acknowledged, credited, and these people are taken into your
yeah.
team. It really is like that, and you give something back. Which I think we did because it just was it was a real community. Um,
Mm,
and I can
yeah.
now say, now doing the poetry, I can say, is this word, do you think? Or is it this word? I don't know. And I have people who can, I mean, in a way, I just hate working on my own again.
Yeah.
Um,
No,
yeah,
that's brilliant. That's wonderful. Thanks. I mean, actually, what training did you provide at or did you when people were
yeah.
starting, to kind of grow their confidence? Because no matter how much you're up for it, sometimes facing an early 19th century manuscript
Yeah.
can be a bit daunting first time around. So did you think about
Yeah, we did.
training?
We did. So Andrew Lacey was a senior research associate on
Hmm.
it. He basically wrote something called, I think it's called Field Notes or something, but it was a kind of introduction to um, Davy's handwriting. And so that we had that. Then he did like a little video. He did quite a few of these little videos, sort of how to transcribe a line, how to various bits like that, and they were really useful. And we ran events as well, so we actually met people as well where they tried it for the first time and things. It was pretty user friendly though. I feel like I'm absolutely rubbish with all of this stuff, and I could do it. So I felt like that was a test. And his handwriting, you just get into it, don't you? And like you get your eye back in, and there's just certain things he does, like his D and things like that. But I mean, I really would love to. I'd love to identify some more of these other hands, and if not even because one of them is this poet Catherine Fanshawe, but we knew it, and we know it is because we've got her hand because she was quite famous. So a lot of these people won't be famous; they'll be in Davy's lab assistants and whatever. But even just finding the handwriting is the same in this notebook and this notebook would be quite useful to me,
Yeah.
in terms of finding out who they are.
Yeah, exactly. Are the notebooks all dated, by the way? Because some of the ones you showed us had date or not.
Yeah, it's such a range. I mean, like some are really precisely dated and some we've got very vague dates. And he will start a notebook in 1 year, leave it, and then carry on in it, decades later.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's some hilarious. The students were loving thing we talked about on Monday. They read he writes all this materialist stuff when he's younger, and then he crosses it out vehemently and says, "How different were my ideas when I was 16 now that I'm 19 and a half." And they were laughing at that.
Yeah, the not so secret notebooks of Humphrey Davy, age 19.
Right, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
brilliant. No, that's fantastic. Could you tell us a bit more, Sharon, about um, what you learned actually from the project and things that you can do now that perhaps you as a result of this amazing collaboration.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like it really is a beginning. Like, so it's been interesting working with the computer studies people because they have a different kind of look on it, don't they? And so Will and the student before him, Ivan, came up with this dashboard for us, which is linked to the our website, where you can search the notebooks in lots of different ways. It's to help us to find out text reuse, because Davy might start a poem here, but then write it up in fair copy here, but then there's a couple of lines, and it's always very difficult for me to work out, is that the same poem or is he starting a new poem, or so that was really good. And there's just loads of projects that could be done. I obviously still feel like there's mapping, we can map the notebooks, that hasn't been done.
Mhm.
I've got loads of ideas as well. So I guess, what have I learned? I mean, I always knew I liked working with people, really, and I suppose that's true, but like I think I've learned, I'm absolutely amazed and impressed by what people know and can do. And that's the thing, I think. I remember one volunteer saying to me, "Oh, I can do all the Slav languages." And then, so there was one notebook where Davy was in Slovenia and the place names were in German, but he was just phonetically writing them down. So it just
Mhm.
took so much ingenuity to try and work out what the place names were that he was describing. But they did it. And and it was just really good conversations and chats and learning about people. Someone said to me, "Oh, when I was younger, I really liked poetry, but I was made to go into science." And so he said, "I feel like doing this project,
Mhm.
bringing it all back together again for me," which I thought was really nice.
Oh, that's lovely. Are you are there things you're going to take forward into Mary Shelley?
Yeah, well, so Davy was so important for Mary Shelley. So she was reading his chemistry when she was writing Frankenstein. There
Hmm.
is a bit of Frankenstein which is almost word for word. In the Royal Institution Museum, they have the both a first edition Frankenstein and Davy's discourse where they're showing how it's almost word for word. So it's almost as if she had the book in front of her when she was writing it. And Victor Frankenstein it is very much like Humphrey Davy in lots of awful ways. Yeah, so I just feel so that I need more. There definitely there's clear links. Um, I don't know. It's really funny because so when I do the Davy poetry at the minute, Greg and I, Greg Tate, we're just making daily discoveries because no one's really looked at them. So it's
No.
like this amazingly exciting thing where you're like, oh my God, I've just found that you find things published you didn't realize and all sorts of stuff.
Mm.
When I'd come to when I come to edit the 1818 Frankenstein, I would be surprised if I find anything new to say about that. Do you know what I mean? And that feels like completely the opposite kind of thing. So it's quite interesting having both projects in my mind, I suppose, and thinking about,
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
what
Mhm.
what can one help the other?
Yeah, absolutely. No, no, that's it. No, brilliant. Thank you, Sharon. Sorry, enough of my questions. Is Are there any questions anyone would like to ask? Please do post them in the chat. Be really helpful. Whilst we're waiting, can I ask you about where the notebooks are? So you talked about most of them being in the Royal Institution. Um, where did you find the others?
There were a couple in Crescent Kerno, which is the Cornish name for the record office down there. And yeah, I mean, so there are also other notebooks that they're not technically Humphrey's. They're John Davies, his brother. And so his brother, when he was writing his memoirs, copied out
Mhm.
all of the notebooks that he had in his possession. And also his wife, Margaret, also did some of that work. And and also the memoirs were they're all at Keele. So
Mhm.
we've got one of them, I think, or something like that. And what I mean, obviously, I'm not going to get money to get. No one's going to be interested enough about this, are they? But what I'd really love to do is to get them transcribed because the bit that we've got, I can tell that John Davy had access to more notebooks than we have now. So
Yeah.
there are some that aren't extant that haven't
Mhm.
survived.
Mhm.
But I might be the only person interested in that in the world. I don't know. So I'm saying.
No, I think it's fascinating, actually. It's good.
Yeah, but it's just I don't think I can get anyone to give me money for it. So yeah, but yeah, I mean, so yeah, and they're interesting in their own right, but they're not very famous, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. Did when John Davy was transcribing, did he, with notebooks that have existed, did he edit his transcriptions? I mean, does he cut things out because he doesn't
Yeah.
use them as, thinking about
Yeah.
working on the memoirs?
So well, Humphrey Davy edited himself sometimes, which I find really peculiar. Like, so he would start writing and then cross. So one of my favorite things is he says, "I cried out," and then he crosses out "cried out" and "said to myself," and you think, who are you writing to? Who are you? Who do you think is reading this?
Mm.
It's very strange. So I don't know whether he always had a sense of audience. But with John Davies, so John Davies is the first person to publish a lot of the poetry posthumously in the memoirs, and because he's Victorian and the rest of it, obviously it's really abridged. And so I feel like Greg and I are doing a good job actually, because
Mm.
I mean, other than that, the poetry is not well known anyway. And actually, there are some good ones. That I mean, I feel I'm going to get more and more confident saying that. I think as I go on.
Yeah, go for it, Sharon.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Because we just the stuff we've been doing very recently, we've had some really interesting conversations about. I've been, and sort of taking them to conferences as well. Um, his early stuff is derivative and is a bit crap, I mean, he's 16 when with some of the poems that we look at, but the stuff I'm doing now in sort of 1814 in the continent is genuinely interesting. Um, but yeah, the way that it's been published, if it's been published, is in a quite a Baudelarized form.
Mm.
Missing lots of stuff. And John Davy loves, he's very interventionist. Puts
Mm.
punctuation in where it's not there, and he even changes words and makes lines rhyme and all sorts of things. So it feels like that's going to be good work. But we are doing a selected edition. So I mean, that was just a partly because so much poetry.
Mm.
And it gives you a kind of way out, doesn't it? We can sort of say, well, we're going to do these poems, and that makes it manageable. But if anyone is interested in them, there's so much more work to be done, I think, as well.
No, that's very interesting. What sort of things did John Davy cut out then? I mean, what, his early Victorian sensibilities, what were they
Yeah,
by?
anything rude. Anything rude. And like all the love poems that Davy wrote to his boss's wife, for example.
Oh,
And
oh
none of
yes,
them make in
okay.
there.
Yeah,
And it,
Beddoes' wife.
yeah, that Beddoes his wife, yeah. So none of that makes it in there. And I mean also there's like there's some quite like bawdy stuff.
Mm,
And satires and and I mean Davy wrote Davy's lamp was not without controversy because there was a dispute between him and George Stephenson about who had really invented the wire mesh lamp first. And Stephenson, who was an autodidact, um, he taught himself, labouring class, northeast, younger man than Davy. Didn't stand a chance against Davy's, brought the weight of metropolitan science to bear down on him. But and actually, when I was looking at that bit in the because we did the letters, didn't we? And I looked at that bit. Davy was writing horrible stuff to the newspapers anonymously, saying that Stevenson was a pirate and all sorts of nasty stuff. So I already knew that side of him. But then there's a poem in the notebooks which we didn't know before that basically really gives Davy's actual view of it, and it's called something like. How I can't remember now, but it's like how ungrateful the Northumbrians with respect to the safety lamp. And then there's another, so he has a lot of these spats, Davy. He's not a very nice character. I always think it's quite interesting to study someone who's not very nice. And he has a number of these spats with people. And then later in his life there's another one with copper bottoms where he had invented something to help the Navy, which protectors, he wanted them to be called Davy's protectors, like the Davy lamp. But they didn't really work. So like they worked in the lab, but they wouldn't work when they were at sea. But he never would accept that. So again, he writes these horrible letters to the Times. So these were signed actually, but really nasty. Letters you think you shouldn't have written that. You should have you should have written it and then torn it up and not sent it.
mm, mm,
Ill-advised letters to the Times. But also there's a poem in the
mm,
style of Don Juan in Ottava Rima, really bad-mouthing this person who had beaten him to the patent. Um, yeah, so I feel like the notebooks sometimes and particularly maybe the poetry gives you the real unvarnished Davy, which you
mhm.
don't get in his letters, you don't get in, his public lectures or anything like that. You get the real nastiness of the man.
Mm, mhm. Yeah,
Um,
no, that's fascinating, Sharon. Really, really good.
yeah.
Um, any questions, anyone?
No one's asking any questions, are they?
Well, can I ask you another one then?
Yeah.
If I may. And apologies, folks, but please do ask a question. Most welcome. I'm teaching. Could you tell us more about how you've been using
Yes.
project in teaching? That'd be really fascinating.
Yeah, so the project with STEM learning we did as part of it was impact acceleration money, and it was going to be an impact case study this. And so we went to STEM learning are a really great organization and they know exactly what they're doing because I don't know at all how to um teach kids, but they came up with these resources based on a manuscript poem, and they showed it's a little bit of a poem excerpt from a poem, and they show it to a class of chemistry students, and they say, "Look, what are you interested in?" Kind of, and they do sort of stuff about light and radiation. It's all really proper science because that's the other thing that I hadn't realized for doing the poetry stuff I'm doing now. There's a lot of science in it, was I don't think I really noticed it before because yeah, so anyway, so they do all that. Um, and they say, I think they asked them at the beginning and the end, do you think that creativity is important for a scientist? And do you think that being a poet would be a good thing for a scientist to be? And then they ask them again at the end or something like this. And then they do the same thing with English students, but they ask them different things like, where's the simile in this and all that kind of like English lit
Mm,
techniques. And they ask them the same questions. And then they bring the two classes together and they
Mhm.
see whether people's ideas have changed. And what has been quite interesting is that it was the chemistry students who were massively influenced by all of this and thought, and kind of were like, oh my God, yes, creativity, him being a poet has really changed the way he thinks about these things. Whereas the English students were just kind of like, oh, yeah, it's just a poem. And it didn't change their minds in the same way as it did. So that was quite fascinating. But now what I'm doing with my own students is that I have these two groups of special projects, they're called, in the first year. So in our summer term, we have 4 weeks of teaching. It's 2 hours each week. I've got two classes, but and then groups are divided into fours, and they're basically what I've given them. I've given them quite a vague brief, which some of them have been kind of worrying about. But I've just said your research associates on this project. These are enormous. There's an enormous amount of material here. I need to find my way through it. Um, can you pick a theme or themes and then like kind of follow it through, pick a few instances to show me how his mind changes about things, and maybe also kind of think about what were his contemporaries thinking about this theme or what were scientists thinking about it, and that kind of thing. And so that people are talking about, they're looking into his religion,
Mhm.
philosophy, some are doing his travels, in France. It also, yeah, it all sounds really good. And I mean, some people are doing kind of maps and some people are doing timelines and they'll do a group essay and then they'll do an individual reflective essay as well. It's the first time it's happened. And yeah, my last class is 4 till 6 today. I bought them biscuits to say, because it's a
That sounds like a good idea.
yeah, try and
That
break
sounds, that sounds
them.
like a good idea. I mean, what sort of have the students been talking about the sort of sources they've been using? Have they been kind of following
Yeah.
routes? It
I
sounds
mean,
fantastic.
I feel like I'm asking a lot of them, and I've worried about that. So I set up this whole resources section on Moodle for them to use, but I think even that is a bit overwhelming as well. And we have a really good resources page on our website, for example. But then I've also given them kind of access to various things, like the edited poems, the poems we've edited already, so they can see what we've done and stuff. Um, yeah, and so yeah, I mean. I think they're going to find things I don't know about. That's what the hope is, really. Because like sometimes their sources aren't my sources, are they? They're kind of no different ways of searching for things. That's what I'm
Mm.
hoping for. Um, and they can do things I can't. Like the idea of the map of his travels around France is completely beyond me. They're quite excited about that. So yeah, yeah. I think that there's just a lot to find out, and I can't see how they won't discover something I definitely don't know. You know.
Yeah, brilliant. No, thank you, Sharon. We have a question from Louisa. So if you don't mind, Louisa, I will read it out. So Louisa says, fascinating project. And she'd like to know a bit more about whether you get a sense of whether or how the materiality of the notebook shapes patterns of attention and inquiry, as well as overlapping between disciplinary practices. Thank you,
That's
Louisa. Great question.
That's Louisa Kale, who is interested in these things, the materiality of the artifact. Yeah. Um, so I don't know about patterns of attention, but certainly disciplinary practices because so that we have got such a range of types of notebook. So some of them are tiny, like little sketchbooks and things like that that he took with him on his travels, that he could put in his pocket. And I mean, there's a brilliant one where he's writing a poem about Mont Blanc, and it says at the bottom, January 25th, written in the carriage, and it's all in pencil. When they're in pencil, it's dreadful because they're much harder to see to be able to decipher than pen. But then there's other notebooks that are they're the lab notebooks, so they're gigantic, like really, really enormous things, 750 pages. Some of the little notebooks we've got are just 15 pages, something like that. And these were never meant to be taken. They're so big because they were never meant to be taken from the lab. So the idea is that lots of people write in them. So you write in there what your experiment is you've just done, so that whoever comes in next can just take it over. Apparently they still do it in labs now, but it's all digital. But it's really important that you kind of, because you're a team, aren't you? And you kind of all working on the same things. You know what happened the day before if you weren't there or whatever. And these were never supposed to be taken home, but he clearly did because we have them. And and there's a lot of his writing in there. And yeah, so I guess the thing is that the notebooks are for different purposes, and so his writing is very different in them. And as I say, as it when he was older, it was more like a diary. But then you'll get sets of notebooks earlier in his career when he's writing the book on agricultural chemistry, which are just about agricultural chemistry. Quite a few of the books, not every book has got poetry in it. So I mean, these numbers seem to fluctuate, but it's about 130 notebooks. Some of them are actually just sheets of paper kind of collected together. A lot of them are lecture notes as well. So they're the kind of very short ones, I guess. But of those 130, there's about 30 that have got poetry in them, and there's only a couple that are only poetry. So most of them have a mix of poetry and science. And often what he would do is he would start one end of a notebook, I think, with science and kind of work that way around it. And then he would turn it round upside down and then do poetry the other way, which I'm very interested in as how his head's working. What I can't quite work out, we've only just realised this sort of relatively recently. Can we be sure that the curator has done the curator note, the number, the right way round? So we're looking at the notebooks the right way round. What if the poetry was the start to the finish and then it turned it round and did the science? I guess I just assumed it, and maybe that's what the curator assumed. And the curator is someone long dead, kind of early 20th century, or I think, in the Royal Institution. So I've went to have a look at them with that specifically in mind to try and work out whether I could see it. There was only one I could definitely be sure because it was lined. So there's a bigger gap at the top
Mm.
than the bottom, or is it the other way around? Anyway, um, and the others I had absolutely no way of telling. But then someone might be able to use a paper expert, might know. I think that maybe Louisa will know. Oh, look, Louisa ask, are they in the original bindings? They are in their original bindings. Oh no, also no. Lots of them are. Some of them I'm not sure. And again, if Louisa, who could email me privately, knows of somebody who would be interested in doing that work, because there's a load of work to be done there. Because I couldn't work out with some of them. Were these notebooks he bought like this, or did he do that? Did he do the putting them in the binding himself? Because that happened, didn't it, as well? Are there different kinds of paper being used? There's loads of where he's cut out bits, and I just think he had so much scurrilous stuff in there. What was the stuff he ripped out? It must have been even worse as well. But I know you need a paper expert, don't you, or something like that, to do that kind of work. And I'd have to retrain entirely, I think, to be able to answer those questions.
Mhm. Oh,
There we are. She's
yeah,
given me
there we
an
go. Yes,
answer.
absolutely. Thank you, Louisa. That's brilliant. It's absolutely fantastic. How do you know that? So, in notebooks with missing pages, how do you know that he ripped the pages out, that it wasn't someone else?
No, I
Sorry.
don't know that. I don't know that at
Yeah.
all. You're absolutely right. Yeah. And some of pages are cut and some are torn.
Mm,
There's a difference between those things.
mm.
I mean, you do get, well, you basically run up to questions that I think will remain unanswered very easily and very quickly. You must know this as well.
I do. I
And,
do know. Yes.
and
Yes.
and in a way, sometimes I don't mind. Sometimes I think, well, like the one I talked about, Catherine Fanshawe,
Mm,
she
mm,
copies into she writes Davy's poem, which is one of the poems to Anna Beddoes.
mm,
A
mm,
very intimate love poem to his
mm,
boss's wife. And I think, why is another woman
mm,
copying that in? Not even sorry, not copying it in, writing it in.
mm,
She leaves gaps at times, and I'm convinced that's because he's telling it to her, he's dictating it to her, and she's leaving the gaps, and he'll think, I'll get back to that. I'll think what that word is, and then there's another version of that, um, where that's so I can tell which one has been copied from which. But
mm,
again, it's another hand, not Catherine Fanshaw's, and then he goes over it himself and kind of changes things. And I think, well, they're really intimate poems.
mm.
I'm surprised that he would be that open and not those poems, not write them himself rather than, yeah.
Fascinating.
But we'll
Yeah,
never know, will we?
absolutely. No, no, absolutely. Unless another letter turns up saying,
Yeah,
sorry, yes, no.
yeah.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Sharon. Are there any further questions, anyone? And thank you, Louisa, for a great question.
Mm. Send
Um,
me the name of that person if you can remember, Louisa.
absolutely. Another form of collaboration, you
Yeah,
see.
exactly.
Obviously embedded. Um, if we have no further questions, I'm going to bring this event to a close. So thank you, Sharon, for a brilliant and genuinely illuminating talk. It's been fantastic to hear. So thank you very much. And thank you very much, everyone, for coming along today. Hope everyone enjoys the rest of the day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.